So welcome back. So the first thing we want to do is, I think I can show you how to save the file. That would be useful. So we're going to go to File and Save, and it's going to ask you where you're saving the file. And you give it a name. The default extension, the file extension is 3.3dm. So I can just type this sketch.3dm. And now with this file saved, we can go to File, New, and let's make a new small objects millimeters. So in case that window doesn't pop up for you, I actually can't remember if if the Macintosh version does that. We can also type units into the command line, and this window, a similar window, will pop up. And make sure your modeling units are in millimeters, and distance display is on decimal. And click OK. So in order to make this sundial, there's a lot of websites that are really useful for doing these calculations. And the best one that I found while putting this class together was this one, located on www.blocklayer.com/sundial.aspx. This will be included in the homework notes too, in case you want a direct link. And so what this site does, it calculates certain things that we need, especially our latitude and these angles. So the first thing we want to do on this specific page is, let's find our latitude. I'm in New York, so I'm going to type in New York City, and I'm going to get coordinates on the bottom here. And so the important number here is my latitude, which is 40.71. And so with 40.71 in mind, I can Control C to copy the number in case I need it. I'm going to go back up to this window, and I'm going to select Northern Hemisphere, and I'm going to type, I'm actually going to paste the number back in, or 40.71, and click Calculate. And let's make sure this full scale button is checked, and we can leave diameter at 300. That's fine. So I'm going to calculate it, and you can see some of this stuff shifted around, and now we have a sundial layout more or less set up for us by this website. And if you go down here, these are the numbers that we're going to need to create the sundial. These are the angles between the numbers here. So with these numbers in mind, let's minimize this, and we'll come back to it. So we basically have to recreate this drawing in Rhino using these angles. So I'm going to minimize this, and in Rhino we're going to draw an arc. So again, this grid is sort of in the way, so I'm going to type grid and then show grid no, and I'm going to turn it off. So the first thing I want to do is let's draw this arc. So I'm going to type arc into the command line, ARC, and it's going to ask me the center of the arc. And so I can click any random point somewhere around here, and start of arc. So let's turn our ortho on and make sure it's set at 90 from last time. So now that it's on, I'm going to click here to start the arc, and then I'm going to click here, somewhere over here. It's not going to let me. You're not going to have a lot of freedom, and I'm going to click here so it's a full 180-degree arc. So now you should have this arc, and we should also, this object is on default, which is fine. So let's select this object, let's change it, let's put it on layer 1. So I'm going to change the object to layer 1, and now it turns red. And I'm going to double click this layer 1, and let's rename it to curves. And so then I'm going to move this checkbox by clicking here. So now curves is my current and active layer, and I'm going to use polyline this angle, this icon, or I'm going to type polyline. And with my object snap on, I'm going to click this endpoint and this endpoint, and I'm going to right click to end the command. So I've just drawn a single segment that closes up this arc. So I still have, these are still two separate lines, and I'm going to select this arc, and I'm going to shift select this line so they're both yellow, and I'm going to type join on the command line. And so you can see it says joining curves, and my two curves have now been joined into one closed curve. So as a test, if I extrude this curve, you can see it's going to make a solid object. I also want to right click and turn to shaded mode. Right click on the word perspective and go to shaded mode. And so you can see that it made this extrusion, and if I move it out of the way, you can see that the underlying curve is still there. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this because we don't need this just yet. So now the next thing we're going to do is just let's scale the arc to the right size. And so I'm going to scale the arc by typing scale on the command line. And my origin point is going to be this side. And my reference point is actually going to be this side. So I'm going to click there. But before letting go, I'm going to type in 300 mm. And then I'm going to press spacebar to enter. So I also had copy on, which I didn't need. I should have turned copy off. But I can press escape. And now I have the original size and the new size. But I'm just going to delete the original size because the larger one is the one I wanted. So just to verify that, I'm going to type distance. And it's going to ask me for the first point that I want to measure and the second point that I want to measure. So I'm going to click this endpoint. And so it's going to tell me that the distance is indeed 300 millimeters. So now let's use the polyline command to draw a line from the midpoint of this. And I got that midpoint because my mid object snap, my O snap, is on for mid. And so that will snap the start point of this new line in the exact middle of this horizontal line. So from here, I'm going to click a line straight up like this and draw a perfectly straight line from here to here. And left click to click the second point, and right click to end the command. So now I have my 12 o'clock, my noon line. And so let's go back to this website and get these those angles again. So over here, so the first angle is going to be 9.91 degrees. Actually, 9.91. Let me just move this off to the side. Okay, so I'm going to select this middle line, and we're going to type rotate, enter, copy yes, center of rotation from here, and so instead of clicking anything, I'm going to type 9.91. And I'm going to right click to end the command, and maybe you press escape to also deselect the object. And so the angle from here to here should be 9.91. To verify that, we can type angle, and it's going to ask me for the start of the first line. So I'm going to click here, end of the first line, here, start of the second line, here, end of the second line there. And I actually did that backwards, so let's try that again. Right click, start of the first line, here to here, start of the second line from here to here. And so you can see that the angle between those two lines is 9.91. So we can continue doing this again. So our next number is 20.63. So I'm going to select this line, the middle line again, and rotate, center of rotation, and this time I'm going to type 20.63. And then without editing the command, I can type the next angle to 33.11. And then the next one, 48.48. And finally 67.67. And the last number is 90. Well, I can also type it in to have that line there. So as you can see, we've drawn half of the sundial, and let's go ahead and select these lines. I'm cross window dragging from right to left like this, so I can select multiple ones at a time. With those selected, I can type, well actually I want to deselect one of these. Let's deselect the middle one by holding by control clicking. So you hold down the control button on your keyboard and you click to deselect it. So I have all of them selected except the middle one, and I'm going to type the command mirror, and it's going to ask me for the start of the mirror plane, which is going to be this line, and the end of the mirror line, which is going to be somewhere down here. And so it's mirrored these lines across that middle line. So now we have the full sundial. So as you can see, if I go back to this window and scroll up here, the proportion of, let's say, 6, 7, 8, 9 is, it matches this one. And we can double click perspective and switch to top view and look at this thing from top view. And so as you can see, this matches exactly what the numbers from this website are giving us. So let's stay in top view for a while, and why don't we left click and drag the cross window, and let's move it out of the way of this grid a little bit. And I can also type grid in this window and turn the grid off. Show grid equals no. And why don't we trim these excess lines off right now? Oh, actually, hold up. Let's just leave these lines for now. So why don't we do actually a quick check to see if our drawing is still flat, because we want the drawing to be perfectly flat. So in perspective view, we can rotate and look at and just verify that our drawing is flat. Sometimes when you're drawing in 3D, I'm just going to make a random line here. It's possible to have your drawing not flat, like if I turned off ortho and I did something like that. You can see in top view it looks flat like this, but when we rotate it, it's actually not flat. You see how it goes off? So we shouldn't worry too much about that, because I haven't shown you anything that would make your drawing not flat. But sometimes that happens when you're snapping to 3D objects on top view. You'll make a drawing that looks like it's flat from top view, but it actually won't be. But just to be sure, let's maximize back in top view. Let's click this box that says project. And this will automatically flatten all the drawings that you make, all the line drawings that you do. And we just got to remember to uncheck that later when we actually want to draw a curve in 3D. So why don't we get to numbering this object next. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually add the numbers to the sundial. So I'm going to use this command. I'm going to close this curve window. I'm going to use this command called text. So we're going to type TEXT and press enter, and it's going to ask for a start point, and I'm going to zoom in and put it right here, and you can see that I've already typed something in, but let's leave this font Arial, height 5 millimeters, mask none, layout scaling, leave that checked, and type 12 into the box and click OK. So now we have this object like this. And with our ortho on, let's rotate this. Also, your gumball should still be on, so we can rotate this exactly so it's sideways, like that. And we'll put it a little closer to the line, like that. And with this 12 selected, I'm gonna let's do the rotate command. Rotate, and make sure copy is on. Copy yes. And so it's going to ask for the center of the rotation, and I'm going to click this intersection where all the lines come together. I'm going to click that, and it's going to ask me for my first reference point, and it's going to be this end point. I'm going to click that. And then my second reference point, I'm going to click the next arc over, the next line over, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and finally this last one. And so now I've made a bunch of 12s. Actually, let's go in the opposite direction too. I'm going to select that again, press spacebar to repeat my last command. Click here, and start clicking in this direction. Well, actually, I don't like that so much because the numbers... Let's flip the numbers as they go over. So I'm going to go and select each of those and delete those. And I am going to do text again. And let's do 12 again, except this time let's rotate it the other direction. And we'll move it so it's almost overlapping this one. And let's run rotate command. And let's go in the other direction. So I clicked from the origin point to this point, and my copy is still on. Copy, yes. And I'm going to start clicking like this. And then I'll add maybe one more right here. But then I'll move this up. Like that. So now all of them say 12, and I'm going to delete this one. So now all of them say 12, and I can double click each letter like this and change it to what I want it to say. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. You can we can do 6 a.m., 7 a.m. So I'm just going back and adding a.m. So all of them. 9 a.m., 10 a.m. And then I could have noon, 12 p.m., noon. And this one. Well, actually, let's get rid of noon. 12 p.m. should be self-explanatory. 12 p.m. Enter. And then from here, I want to start doing 1 p.m. Oh, but you see it flipped the location a little bit. But that's okay. 2 p.m. 3 p.m. 4 p.m. 5 p.m. 6 p.m. So now I want to move these down a little bit. So for each one, let's turn on our near snap and M spacebar, and we're gonna just move them inwards along this line. So the near snap enables me to move along that line, and I'm just gonna go in, and I'm using the move command. So M space, and then I click this line, and then I click and drag somewhere along this line, and then I press spacebar to repeat the command. Well, first I select the 4 p.m. and then I press spacebar to repeat it, and then I just click and drag and I push it in slightly. And then this one I can move like that. Okay, so now I have all the times laid out according to this same diagram. And we also want to verify whether our drawing is still flat, and it is because we had project on. Okay, so now we've completed the 2D drawing that we need to make the 3D model with. Well, at least part of it. We have to do the triangle part next. So let's go back to our website, and you can see that it's already generated a layout for this triangle portion, which is actually called a gnomon, with the correct angles based on this 40.71 latitude for New York. So we're going to redraw this triangle using the Rhino tools. So let's make note of these numbers, and we can draw these as a 2D shape next to the arc. So let's use our polyline tool, and I'm looking at the triangle in my other window, and you may have to write these numbers down, or you can switch back and forth. And I'm going to use this endpoint as a snap point, and I'm going to click once, and before I click again, I'm going to type 150 millimeters, and then left click, and then right click to end the command. So now I have this line. If I type distance, and then I click here and here to measure the distance, it's exactly 150 millimeters. So now I'm going to draw a line going in this direction at 129 millimeters according to that drawing. So I type the polyline command and start from this endpoint, and before I click, I'm going to type 129 mm and then spacebar. And then I left click and then right click to end the command. So now this line, if I type distance, it should be 129. And now according to simple geometry, if I just draw a line from here to here, this angle should be 40.71 and this length should be 198. So I can verify that by first measuring this distance, and it's 197.8, which is close enough. And then I'm going to type angle, and then start of the first line, end of the first line, start of the first line, end of the first line, and it's telling me that it's 40.69, which again is close enough. So now I can select all three of these lines and type join, and I've joined it into one shape. You know, let's actually do this backwards, because the most important angle is the 40.71. So let's draw another line like this. Let's draw another line, and starting from here, let's do 150 millimeters. Left click and then right click to end it. And I'm going to just move it over a little bit. That was just my starting snap point. And what I'm going to do now is rotate this existing one with my copy still on. So I'm going to select the object, type rotate, copy yes, and then from this point, and then my second point will be the end point, I'm going to type 40.71 and then enter. So now that angle is right on, even though it doesn't look the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw using this. I'm going to draw a straight line going up, way past it, and then I'm going to type extend, and then I'm going to click this line, spacebar, and then this line. So it's going to extend that line to this, and then I'm going to press spacebar to end the command, and I'm going to type trim, spacebar, click this line, spacebar, and then this line, and then spacebar to end the command. So now I've trimmed this triangle to the extents, and I can select all of it and type join. And so even though these two triangles look identical, I know this one is much more accurate because I started with the known angle of 40.71. So there were two ways to do this, and because Rhino is so accurate, it pays to use the more accurate version. So now that this is joined, I can move this over here. And why don't we do a little housekeeping and select all the text. So I'm shift left clicking. So sometimes it'll ask me which line what I actually want to select if I select too close to this other line. So like right here. So I have a choice and I actually want to select the text. And I want to make a new layer. And let's call it text. And then I want to right click and change objects and put all those objects on that layer. And so you can see they turn all black because they're on a black layer. And maybe I want to change the layer color to something like magenta. So now all my text is on a layer and all my curves are on another layer. And then I have this gnomon over here to the side. So also, before we move on, let's cross window across everything, and I'm going to type copy. And then I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click somewhere else over here. And I'm going to make a copy of all these lines and put them down here just for later. Because this tutorial I'll show you how to do it in 3D, but then these lines, if you print them out on a piece of paper and glue it to a piece of cardboard and cut it all out, you can actually make a working you can actually make a working sundial by printing out these lines. But we'll get back to that at the end. For now, let's concentrate on modeling it in 3D. So with this original copy, let's double click on top view, go into perspective view by double clicking, and you can see our other version here. Let's just focus in on this for now. And let's select this triangle. And what we're going to do is we're going to rotate it. So ROT, rotate. And then click from here to here. And then we're going to rotate 90 so that it's like that. And so I have copy on, which I didn't need. So I'm going to delete the original. And then now I'm going to show you a new command called rotate 3D, which will let me flip it up. So I'm going to type rotate 3D, and then I'm going to click here to start my rotation axis and here to end the rotation axis, and I'm going to click off to the side for my first reference point, and for my second reference point I'm just going to move the mouse so that it actually flips upwards like that. So now I can move. So let's move this from this point, from this corner to this corner here, to this center point. So it should be in place like that. And we can type planar surface, PLANAR-SRF, and press enter. And so this makes it into a solid plane. And so just in case you don't see it in wireframe, just make sure it's on shaded view. So if you switch it to wireframe, you can see it like that, and if you switch it to shaded, it'll look like that. So why don't we do the same thing for this bottom piece here, except for the bottom piece, let's extrude it. I could easily run planar surf on this command, on this object, and make a flat plane. But let's actually give this base a little thickness. So I'm going to extrude curve. And instead of going in the plus direction, I want to go in the minus direction. So I'm going to type minus, how about minus 5 millimeters? So minus 5 mm, and press enter. And I got to make sure solid is on. I press enter, and so that's what it does. So now I have like a nice solid base for it. So the next thing I want to do is I want to carve some of these lines into the actual object. So these lines right now are just simply curves, but to make it into a realistic looking sundial, I want to sort of carve these out as sort of engraved lines. So let's select 1, 2, I can cross window drag a bunch of these. Probably don't have to do the middle one. I do this one, this one, this one. So I'm going to select all those, and I'm going to type the command pipe. And it's going to ask me for a pipe radius, and I'm going to leave it on 1.0. So you can also type 1 mm. And then you press spacebar. And so now you can see that it has piped all of these. It's drawn a pipe around all the lines. And so if you switch to wireframe mode, you can see that the pipe is exactly, the line is exactly in the center of the pipe. And then because that we extruded down, the pipe is only sitting about halfway into the base. So this should give us some geometry to sort of take the bite out of it. I think these lines are kind of a little bit too fat. So I'm going to Control Z this. And so let's try it again, but with a smaller diameter. So I'm going to cross window drag again to just select these really quickly. And this time I'm going to type pipe, and then I'm going to type 0.5. So 0.5 mm, and then enter. And so that's much better. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to cut this base plate with these pipes. I want to subtract the pipes away from the base plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type Boolean difference. So I can type BOOL and just wait for it to autocomplete and select Boolean difference. And so it asks me to select the surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from, and that's going to be my base plate. And then I'm going to press enter or spacebar to continue. And now it's asking me select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with, and that's going to be the pipes. And I want to make sure it says delete input yes. So now I'm going to shift click and select all the pipes. I go all the way around and select all the pipes. So this may be a little difficult. I'm sort of shift selecting, but I'm also shift right clicking to pan and then right clicking to move. So this may take a little getting used to, but eventually you should do this pretty quickly with some practice. So after I've selected all those, and you can see the command is still running, I can press enter when I've selected all the pipes, and it's going to think for a second. And now what it's done is it's actually subtracted that pipe, and the pipes are no longer there because they've been booleaned out. And now what we have left are these notches. So let's do a little more housekeeping here, and let's create a new layer. And let's call this layer surfaces. Enter. And I'm going to select the base plate and this fin, and I'm going to right click and change objects layer, and I've put now the surfaces on that layer, and I can turn them on and off to just, or let's put the check marks next to the default again, because you can't turn the layer off that has the checkbox. So if I want to turn all the curves off, now I can. Just the numbers visible and the object. Okay. So I think the next thing I want to do is let's make these flat letters into actual text as well. So let's go and turn our surfaces layer off. So everything will disappear except the numbers, and you got to make sure your curves are off too. So let's just do this 6 a.m. So I'm going to select this, and one of the things I forgot to mention that's super handy is selecting an object and pressing zoom, pressing Z space, and then S space to zoom selected. So once again, it's you select this and type Z space and then S space. So once in a while you'll sort of get off track, or your model will start getting pretty crazy. You can select any object and type Z space S space, or you can also type Z space E space, which will zoom extents. So Z space S space zoom selected. And so now I'm going to select this block of text, and I'm going to type explode. And so let's go around and let's explode all the text. Let's select all of it like this. And I'm going to press spacebar to just do it again. And so now you can see that the fill has disappeared, but now these are just curves. So now let's try it with one again. And let's make sure the text, let's make sure your checkbox is on default. And I'm going to cross window drag across all these, and I'm going to type extrude. And so I'm going to type in, how about 1 millimeter. So I can also go around and do it all at once to all of it by cross window dragging, pressing spacebar. And so you can see I'm doing all the text now, and then I can type 1 millimeter again. So now let's turn the text layer off, and now all we have are these 3D letters, and we'll select all the letters and let's put them on another layer, a new layer called 3D text. Enter. And then right click, change objects layer, and let's give this color too. Let's make it green. And so this layer color is not, I want to point out, it's not like the printing color. It's more of color that you give an object in order to see the difference when you're just modeling. It's easier to just see objects that are different colors to be able to tell the difference between some of them. So I could just as easily make this 3D text layer black or dark gray, and it would sort of look more stone-like, at least in the viewport. So for now, I'm just going to leave it black. So now we have 3D text. So the other thing we should do is make this fin into 3D. So I'm going to select the fin, the gnomon, and I'm going to type extrude surf, EXTRUDE-SRF. And then this time, I'm going to click both sides yes, solid yes, and then I'm going to type 0.5 millimeters. Enter. And what it's going to do is it's going to extrude that same surface 0.5 millimeters in both directions for a total thickness of 1 millimeter. So now that is also a 3D object as well now. And so at this point, I want to show you another display mode called rendered mode. So you want to right click on perspective and switch to rendered. And so you can see when you switch to rendered, everything will turn gray, and you'll see some sort of shadow, but it doesn't exactly have the sun in there yet. And at this point, technically, the modeling of this is done. This will work. So I'll show you that next, how to get the sun in there. But I just want to point out that later on, like in the beginning of the video, I showed you this gnomon a bit more. It was a bit more decorative, and we'll get to that at the end where we decorate the triangle a bit more. So at this point in rendered mode, I'm going to go into the command line here and type sun, S-U-N. And so this will pop up. This window will pop up, and sun options. And first thing we're going to do is turn the sun on by clicking this box. And so your window should appear like this now. If you don't see the shadow, I recommend we can go into Tools, Options, and then in this window we go down to View, and double click that, then Display Modes, and then click Rendered, and then click Restore Defaults if it doesn't quite look, if it looks too dark or if there's something wrong. Restore Defaults and click OK. So now we have this shadow thing here. And so let's get in the actual coordinates for New York, for example. So I can also turn this skylight on, like this. But let's leave it off for now. So the first thing I want to do is let's move the year up. Sorry, let's move the down in this box. Let's type the date. So I'm going to do August 22nd, 2016. Press enter. And then location, you should be able to press here, but you can also find a place. I'm going to type New York, USA. You can also click here. I'm not sure if this is available in the Mac version of Rhino. And then time zone should be GMT 0500. So now, when we drag this around, so if we go up to time, so this represents what time it is, you can see that our solar clock is working. So if we leave it on about 9 o'clock, you can see that the shadow is hitting the 9 a.m. Line. Let me turn on that skylight. And so because the sunlight simulator is so accurate in here, this will undoubtedly work in real life. One of the keys is that north is 90 degrees. So in this case, north is in the direction of this arrow. So if we rotated this object so that it was facing the other way, it wouldn't be accurate. So one of the caveats of, let's say, if you actually made this sundial, you have to orient it to north using some sort of compass or the compass built into your phone, for example. And so as you slide this around, you can see that the sun position is moving, and also it's being reflected on the solar clock because the angles that we got are correct. So this will simulate it simulates how this solar clock works virtually, but is super useful for things like buildings and other sun-related studies that you can model accurately to the correct size and simulate how they would behave using this extremely accurate sun tool. So more or less, modeling this sundial it's actually complete. And now I'm going to show you a couple other things. The first thing I'm going to show you is how to make this gnomon a bit fancier. So let's switch back to shaded view. Oh, the other thing I should mention is that by default, let's say if I had my curves on, in rendered view, curves don't always display. In this case they are because I reset it to default. So as a warning, don't panic if all your curves disappear when you're in rendered view. Back in shaded view, let's go back down to our copy of this gnomon and let's copy it again. I'm going to click here and click here. And let's go in and make some sort of pattern on this gnomon. So in top view, I'm going to click perspective, and then in my foreview, I'm going to go into the top view. I think the first thing we should do is we could offset the curve a little bit. So let's explode this object by typing explode, and then selecting these two lines and joining them, and then let's offset by typing offset. Let's offset 8 millimeters. Okay, and I'm gonna press trim, type trim, and I'm gonna click this red line and click this and press enter to end the command. And okay. And so let's bring in another image. So let's go to Google for that. So I'd like to put some sort of design here, like a pattern, and I went online and I found an example of Art Nouveau butterfly. So we're going to try to use that. So I'm going to include that file along with the class file that you can use and trace along the same one. So we're going to use this command called picture frame. So if we type picture frame into the command line, it's going to ask me for an image. And so I'm going to click this butterfly drawing. And then it's going to ask me for the first corner and the second corner. And so now this exists as an object that, let's position this around. Maybe let's scale it down a little. I'm going to hold down shift and click to scale down proportionally. And so we just want the wings to touch this part and that part. Maybe we scale this up a little bit like that. And okay, that should be pretty good, I think. So we can select this image, and in our properties, let's go to this material icon, which is this tube of paint. And under transparency, let's just drag it so that it's almost like at 90%, so we can still see the background viewport. Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention was this is probably not an option if you're using the Mac version, but in PC, if you type gradient view, you can toggle between the background that I have and the background that you have. So gray is fine, but I like it on this blue so I can see a little bit more of a difference between the two objects. And so let's also select this butterfly, and let's just put it on a new layer. And let's call this one bitmap. And then right click, change object layer. And then we also want to press the little lock next to the name to lock it so we can't move it or select it or accidentally scale it. What we're going to do is we're going to actually trace this object now. So before we begin, let's make a new layer and call it butterfly trace and make that the current layer. And I also will point out again that this portion of the tutorial is completely optional. Works with or without the butterfly pattern. It's not obvious. So let's go to this icon over here and hold it down, and let's bring up interp curve again. You can also type interp crv, and we're going to start tracing this butterfly. So click here, start clicking around, and if you mess up a point, you can press U space to undo the previous point, U space, and we can keep going back. Or if you decide, then you can go and continue forward. And so when we get to a sharp corner like this, we have to come back later and trim it. So we click somewhere out here, and then right click to end the curve, and right click to start a new curve, and we're going to start an intersection. We're going to just draw it as an intersection with the idea that we're going to come back and trim it later. So now I'm going around with this curve, and I'm going to fake it so that it actually touches the black. I'm going to extend it there. And then now I'm going to right click and start my curve up here. And again, I'm going to go past the intersection point. And then I'm going to start a new curve past the intersection point like that. So now what we can do is, let's turn off the bitmap real quick so we can see a little better. And I'm going to use trim, and I'm going to click here and press enter, and click that line, and press enter again, and we'll press enter again to start the command, and then enter again, and then click that. And I'm going to go around and do the same thing for all of these intersections. Then turn the bitmap back on. And so just in case, I actually can select these lines and I can join them right now. Join. So I should have only two curves. So let's continue on with the rest of this butterfly. So I'm going to continue using the int curve command. And so, okay, so let's do this one here. And it might help to turn ortho off. You have to turn ortho off actually. What I meant to say was object snap off. So now with object snap off and ortho off, you can freely draw these lines. So the idea always is that I'm exceeding the boundaries with the idea that I'm going to come back and trim them later. And I'm also connecting the object to itself so there's no floating objects. Oh, I meant to continue that line all the way down. It's about there. And we go around, do this. That. That. So all I'm doing is right-clicking to repeat the command and right-clicking to end the command as well. So I'm not being terribly precise. You can feel free to go in and be as accurate or as inaccurate as you want. You can also pick another image entirely. But these are the fundamental techniques to tracing a shape like this. So in all cases, I'm trying to leave my intersections like that, and so I can come in later and just trim them very quickly. So maybe I'll also do this antenna. And I'm going to use another command called circle, where I actually, how about ellipse? ELLIPSE. That. That. Okay, I think that's about it. We don't have to worry about what's inside the lines. Let's turn off the bitmap and trim this out. So you have to be really vigilant and careful. So I'm using trim, TRIM, spacebar, and then spacebar, and then spacebar, spacebar. So I was saying you need to be pretty careful about making sure these all trim together, because otherwise you won't be able to extrude the shape correctly. So you just need to go in and make sure that you get everything. So here in this instance, I'm going to select this one and this one. Then I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to do the reverse. I'm going to select this one and trim here and here. So I am going kind of fast, but the more practice you do on this, the faster you'll get, and you can always pause this video and rewind if there's something you need repeated. If you ever, so I accidentally just trimmed out an extra line, let's Control Z to undo that, and we can start the command right back up again with spacebar. And so now I actually want to cut this into this shape. Use these two lines to trim this black, and these two lines to trim this and this. And then I'm going to cut this shape into this shape. Whoops. So as you can see, if this was all, if I select it all, and let's put it all on this butterfly trace layer. So the whole thing should be purple. Now let's get rid of this line. Let's trim this line. Wait, let's select this line and type trim and select this middle line out. So now that's what the gnomon is looking like. So let's see if this works. I'm going to select it all and type join, and it's telling me that it's 6 closed curves. 3, 4, 6. Okay. So, and then I should also, let's just test it. I'm going to extrude the curve up, and it's solid. It looks pretty good. So before we extrude, let's select it all and type just join again, just to make sure. I guess it's already joined. So we can select it all and type group as well. And so now this groups it all into one selection. We can go in and delete our original gnomon, or put it on another layer, for example, and turn that layer off. And now let's move this butterfly into position over there. So I'm gonna M move. Actually, what I did last time was let's turn on OSnap ortho as we move into 3D. So I'm gonna rotate this object first like this, in this direction. So it made that copy, but that's okay. I'll just leave the original copy there. And now we'll rotate 3D and move it up like that. And so now I should just be able to move it from this point to this point here. I'm going to turn, so in the middle of this command I can actually turn off my surfaces just to clarify things. And then it's there, and I can turn my surfaces back on. Now that I have this butterfly, we're going to use extrude surf, SRF. Oh, sorry. What I meant to say was extrude curve. And then both sides yes, solid yes, and I'm going to type 0.5 millimeters on both sides. And so now if we switch back to, well, let's turn our curves off first, and we'll turn our text off as well. And if we switch back to rendered view and we type sun, we can see that the solar clock is still working like before with this baseline telling the time, except now we have this intricate butterfly pattern cut into it. So if you haven't saved the file for a while, now's the time to do it. I'm going to save this as sundial002. So why don't we take a break, and when we come back I'll show you what you need to do to actually print this out on through your printer and cut it out and make the sundial. Okay, welcome back. So this model exists in 3D as a 3D object, and it's an accurate simulation of how this would behave in the real world. But Rhino also lets you take things out into the real world. If you had a 3D printer, for instance, you could actually print this out and have it work. But I'm going to assume that we don't right now. And so what the other thing we can do is, switching back to shaded mode, is let's turn on our text and curves, is actually go and take this pattern and print it out on a printer. And once you print it, you can glue it to some cardboard and cut it out so it's rigid, and you can make this as a working sundial. So let's go into top view, and let's go into this second copy of objects that we have stored. And I think the first thing I want to do is trim these excess lines off so it looks a bit neater. So I'm going to type trim and select the arc shape, and I'm just going to drag and cut these excess lines off. Because remember, they were longer to make the pipes, but now that we're printing these out, we're just printing these two shapes out. We don't need them to extend beyond the arc, and this is where you're going to be cutting out anyways. And so now the only thing you have to do is type the word print, and this window will pop up, your print dialog, and you can print straight to your printer from here. So in my case, I have this laser printer here. So you can select the printer, and paper size, you click letter, which is 8.5 by 11. If you have a larger printer, you could print it all out at once. So in the view at output scale, let's do window, and let's set it. So now you can tell that, so this window is, the sundial is actually bigger than the piece of paper. So let's escape out of this, and let's close this real quick, and let's draw a rectangle. So I type the word rectangle, and first corner of rectangle is here, and the other length, let's do 11 inches, and in the other direction, let's do 8.5 inches. So you can see it almost fits, 8.5 by 11. So now what we're going to do is scale both of these down proportionally. So let's select both of them, and we'll type scale. And we want to click from here to here, and just fit it so that, okay, so it just fits within the paper. And again, I had copy on, so I can delete the original. Or actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it again, but this time turn copy off. And I'm going to scale it down so that this fits within that 8.5 by 11 box. And then this box we're going to have to print on a separate sheet of paper. So now when we go back to print, let's do landscape. Under view, output, and scale, make sure it's on 1:1. And we set, and let's move it so that the sundial fits near our box now. And you would press print with that, and you would go over to the triangle. So I'm just going to close this rather than printing it, but you should print it if you want to make it, and you cut it out with some scissors and you glue it to some cardboard. And same thing with the other one, you would print this triangle and glue it just like we assembled the 3D model, and you'd have a working sundial. So we've reached the end of this lesson. Hopefully you've picked up some useful skills and techniques in Rhino that you can use on your own projects, and you've realized how powerful and accurate Rhino is as a tool for artists and designers. So thanks again, and see you next time. Bye.